What's shaking, folks? Back with another reaction, back with another tune from the playlist provided by great friend of the channel, Kim, related to a handful of interconnected themes and processes, some of them inspiring and hopeful, many of them disillusioning, destructive, and tragic. And in that regard, this one was put under the subheading of Defiance, and it's a track by Incubus. Now, I don't really know who they are, but I've been aware of them for about 20 years. Which is to say, my friend Chris and I have been playing the Halo franchise for a very long time, and perhaps the most successful and famous of all the Halo games is Halo 2, which came out in 2004, which is the same year as this track. And Halo 2 had a soundtrack like all video games, but a couple of the tunes incorporated were from proper bands who recorded a song specifically for that purpose. And one of the ones that was actually used is essentially like a suite with different movements by Incubus. So I've heard Incubus's work in a very limited and specific sense, but I'm not familiar with their work overall. My expectation, based on my general understanding largely through reputation, is that they're like a heavier alternative rock type of band, so I don't know if that's correct, but that's my vague understanding going into this. And the tune in question, which again comes from 2004, is Megalomaniac. And Kim's description is that this relates to a 2-bit huckster who turns everything he touches into something with less integrity, less ethics, less quality, and thus has a very corrosive and corrupting effect, but whose reputation and significance is redeemed through reality television, and thus is brought back to legitimacy despite that immorality, despite that corrosive and unethical character. So, I suppose you could apply that to many people throughout every phase of history in every region of the earth, and as a historian, I would very much confirm that. But I feel like it is especially relevant currently. If anyone, is paying attention to current events, especially here in the US, and is aware of the current US president, then I think there's an easy application of this concept. Kim did highlight a single lyric with a couple parts to it for a particular note, and that is, "You're no Jesus, you're no fucking Elvis," which I find very amusing and speaks to different scales of this assessment. So, yeah, ultimately, I have not heard Incubus enough to get any sense of what it'll be sonically, though I am predicting some heavier guitar type of alternative rock. In any case, let's give this a listen. It's Incubus, the track is Megalomaniac, and it's, from 2004. It is also listed as explicit, which I take to mean that there's some radio edit where maybe the profanity is removed or bleeped over or, sort of sonically expunged, but this is the original / explicit mix, as I said, of Megalomaniac. great, and in some ways it conformed to my expectations about the sonic stylings, but in a few other ways it didn't, meaning it did have a heavy alternative rock, guitar-driven sort of sound, but number one, there were some more electrical elements than I expected, so there were some electronic touches that enhanced or altered the dynamic of a more straightaway alternative rock sound. Number two, and especially during that interlude, it had more of like an ethereal type of quality, and like the vocal delivery in a couple points, but especially during that interlude, had more of a like tribal, ethereal world music type of sound than I ever would have expected, and that really added a bit of atmosphere and flavor to the track beyond, again, what I would have expected. So not only do I enjoy the guitar heavy sounds with a bit of like industrial distortion, especially in that opening section, but again, there was a bit more electronica and a bit more ethereal, like, again, what's the right word? Like, world music feels like it's not quite what I'm going for, but a bit of a, like, art rock type of sound. Again, I don't know if that's right either, but either way, I very much enjoyed the vocals, and they exceeded what I maybe expected. So, not to say that I just expected it to be like shout singing or something, but it had that energy and power, but also some very melodic and esoteric type of delivery over the course of the tune. And yes, like the electronic sounds, talk about like hearing him on the radio, seeing him on the TV and so on, or on the screen. So I think maybe some of the electronic sounds can be interpreted as electronic signals and the, beaming out. But I like the idea of step down. It's, he's not falling for this cult of personality or for the cheap, exploitative tactics and self-enrichment that this megalomaniac is utilizing and encouraging in the most, sort of like passive way to interpret the sentiment, but trying to get this person to, give up their game and to step down, to get out of here, and to stop trying to manipulate and control and exert power through dubious and destructive influence. So again, number one, it's well written, and the intensity of the narrator's sentiment in that regard is very much found in the sonics, and it feels unfortunately all too relevant and all too understandable in the current times. So yes, once again, shout out to Kim for curating all these tunes, for providing context and insight and informational specifics about the individual tracks in this journey. There's a few more. There's another The tune. There's another Elton John tune. I want to say there's one more Mark Allman tune. So we're getting closer to completing the playlist, and I have been jumping back and forth in terms of the subtopics in question. So I appreciate not only Kim's patience, but for her understanding that, there's always a bit of semi-randomness to my process, and I like the idea of these themes being interwoven, because it's not like, in almost any case in human history or the present where the sequence is a one shot and then everything everywhere ends up in a place of slightly more hope and understanding or like harmony. So even as some processes and individual perceptions may take that trajectory, there's others where they're still in an earlier phase and so on. So I think it actually works to jump around a little bit. As I said, there's a few more in this playlist. Do let me know what you think of this track. Once again, shout out to my friend Chris up in Alaska, who I still play Halo with, or whom I still play Halo with on a weekly basis. And shout out to Incubus for not only this cool tune, but again, I'm forgetting what it's called, but they did a suite of tunes for Halo 2. And I sort of want to reconnect with that now. So, in any case, let me know what you think. I will see you next time. Peace.